Hello, hello. How's everyone doing? So, got a story here. Says here, why are disabled people paid much less than other workers in the US? Rhymes. Uh, Probably because there's less of them and there's only certain jobs that they can take. Am I right? Says here, the last half century have seen a marked change in diversifying the workplace. Yeah. Landmark legislation sound such as the Equal Pay Act of 1963. That's so long ago. Let's just going forward. Let's just say that Equal Pay Act already exists, and let's just there's no need to reference it anymore. It's been so much part of our lives that it's just a regular thing now. It's not. It's like people got to keep going back in time to be like, oh, discrimination exists back in the day. Remember those days? You weren't alive. 15 years later, have made great strides in fighting against discrimination against women in work. Of course, the champions of victimhood. Though certainly not a completed endeavor, the attitude change in support of women needs to be replicated for disabled workers. All right. Despite ongoing efforts to promote inclusivity, recent findings revealed a significant disparity in earnings between disabled and non-disabled workers. There are 7.5 million workers with disabilities in the US, and there's like over 300 million people in the US. So, small fraction. Articus, what was it? Atticus, a law firm specializing in disability and senior support, studied the U.S. Census Bureau data to assess the situation of more than 1,000 workers, both with and without disabilities. Disabled workers are regularly treated worse than non-disabled workers. How so? The headline figure from the survey is that non-disabled workers make 42% less than the average. Do they mean disabled workers make 42% less than the average? Because that's what they're advocating for. 30,000 a year less to be specific. While this isn't necessarily being underpaid in the same role, the problem here is that disabled workers, I knew they were talking about disabled workers, are not being given the same opportunities to break into the highest paying roles in the US. Obviously. And it's the same thing that, like I said, the original masters of victimhood, the ladies were complaining about the fact that they weren't getting equal pay was that they wanted to get in those higher positions. Guess what? The problem is higher positions means more money, which means more competition because more people want those jobs, which means only the best of the best can get in there, which means you have to compete with those best of the best and you have to beat them out for those positions. You can't just have affirmative action give you those positions. So your initiative is not going to work because affirmative action can't give you the highest positions. It can't. So, mm, this is reinforced with the statistic that workers with disabilities are 10% less likely to have received a pay raise in the past year. Were they working for those companies or jobs for a long time to show value that they, oh my God. Using the data gathered from their survey, Atticus found that workers with disabilities have over 50% more financial stress. Okay, probably medically related, in part due to a 75% higher risk of unexpected job termination. Could it be that their medical expenses and their stresses and their complications for getting to work and their personal needs for getting into that job and keeping that job, could those all those complications add up to the fact of why they're not able to keep these jobs? Could any of that factor in? Or is it just discrimination? These financial issues combined mean they are over 60% less likely to contribute to monthly savings compared to workers without disabilities. And these all sound like personal problems, but I'm sure you're going to explain to me why that needs to be fixed by someone outside of these individuals. This entrenches the wealth disparity between the two worker groups. Okay. The richest people in the world are old as hell. They're probably disabled in some way. Why don't you count them? Significantly, 44% of workers with disabilities depend on at least three income sources to afford a life in the country racked by inflation and high interest rates over the last 3 years. You're explaining problems that everybody has, but you're saying it disproportionately affects these people with disabilities, even though there are a bunch of charities in place to help these individuals and other individuals that are disenfranchised. But let's ignore that because it doesn't add to the narrative. The persistent earnings disparities, compounded by the systematic discrimination and necessity to juggle multiple jobs, underscore the critical need for change. Right. Why are disabled workers paid less? I don't know. Why do they make more on on sites specifically made, you know, for instance, like GoFundMe. I'm sure disabled people make more on GoFundMe's if they explain their situations than someone that is an able-bodied individual. Why are disabled workers paid less? The Fair Labor Standards Act should prevent employers from paying disabled workers less than other workers. However, the FLSA does allow for the use of special minimum wage certificates for individuals with disabilities, referred to as Section 14 certificates. These certificates are issued by the Department of Labor and allow employers to pay sub-minimum wages to workers with disabilities when certain conditions are met. They probably added that in order to get preferential treatment and preferential hiring for people with disabilities. For instance, I have a disability, and it is military related, and I can get preferential treatment for employment because of it. Qualifying for support schemes from the federal government also has problems. The earning threshold for security disability insurance is up to, okay, $1,500 a month. In 2024, earning over that means financial support is sapped away. So if they earn too much, their financial support is sapped away, which applies to pretty much anybody else. Anyways, they have not explained their case in any way, shape, or form. It's pretty obvious why people with disabilities have a wealth disparity compared to everybody else, because there's less of them, and there's less of them, there's less ways for them to make money, and the most disabled individuals are actually taken care of by the state and not necessarily employed in a way that they can afford their own care. So basically, they're wards of the state, and they cost taxpayers money rather than make money to pay said taxes. So it's only rightfully so, that they make less than everybody else. But anyways, until next time.